Hello and welcome to this conversation hosted by Emerald Technology Ventures. Today's episode is focusing on startup collaboration and how it supports the impact on open innovation. I'm Markus Moor, partner with Emerald Ventures, and I'm joined today by Thomas Kostka. Thomas has seen it all. He's been on the startup side. He has had multiple different roles in big corporations, mainly chemical corporations. You've worked in business units, led operations. You led for the last 10 years mainly at the intersection between external technology and internal needs, kind of trying to build a bridge. You've been with Henkel in that role. You have now for the last year led ALTANA's technology or corporate venture unit. So you've been in kind of all the different positions. So welcome today for this, I'm sure, interesting discussion. Before we dive into questions, maybe you want to share a bit what ALTANA is looking for when they collaborate with startups.
Thanks for having me. We look basically for technology that we would or could not develop ourselves, but where we see a strategic fit, basically fueling our growth aspirations for future business. And that could be new materials, advanced materials, chemicals. In principle, we're a specialty chemical company. But it also could be around new business models or digitalization, where basically new business models come to play. These kind of things.
Right. Now, as I said, you've seen it like 10 years at this intersection of startups and big corporations. What is your number one lesson learned? What can go wrong?
What can go wrong?
Or lesson learned?
Lesson learned. I would probably have 2 points. One is basically the question, where to play. I mean, how do you define the topics that are of interest? Mm-hmm. And the other one is basically with whom to play, right? So to the first point, it's really, you need a strategic alignment on the future growth topics of the company. And that obviously isn't something you can pull off like instantaneously. This is an alignment process, but for example, at ALTANA, we have like two kind of search fields. One is very close to the operating businesses, basically directly hooked onto the strategic plan of the business units where they want to grow. And I can support that with external ideas. And the other type of search fields is in adjacent markets or in new markets, like 3D printing, printed electronics. And if you have an alignment about those kind of topics, that's the entry ticket that you know what you're doing.
Yeah, no, that's actually what we hear from a lot of people. Like, you have to build this alignment on the strategy, otherwise you're probably lost from the beginning.
And the second point is basically, I mean, nothing against an opportunistic approach when an opportunity is there. But in the end, you will always ask yourself, do I work with the best partner for the given challenge, right? So, and to answer that kind of question, first of all, you have to know what are the players in the fields, right? Yeah. So, and then you can make your choice or have basically a discussion what approach would be the best to make. Yeah. Yeah. And this is where basically the partners in an open innovation system then also are very valuable, just like Emerald helping us with deal flow, seeing not only one startup, but having the sector knowledge then what other basically startups are in that same kind of play.
Right. So if you have your strategy kind of tied down, you found partners, or you found a partner which you want to explore, the next step is finding the right home within ALTANA, right? Not just the right home, the right anchoring point, the right team, the right people, the right champion to actually work to make the collaboration successful? What are your considerations when you think of who should work with that startup internally?
You have to have the underlying strategy piece in place for that. So for example, if it's something that is very close to the operating business, that's an extension of a product line where they see like time to market in half a year or a year max, then it's a product development unit in an operating business. If it's for a topic that is related to 3D printing or printed electronic, where we talk maybe about a couple of years longer patience you have to have, then the operating business is definitely not the right partner. So you have to have a sponsor in a corporate function, in R&D, in a team there.
Yeah, so you give that quite some consideration to make sure you have the right place at the right time.
Exactly, and that is part also of that preparing discussion. How do you want to play this strategically? So which topics you want to play, and then is also already like half of the answer to your question: with whom internally you will set up this kind of cooperation.
Right. Then ultimately, to move it forward, it needs people, right? And the people need to have the right motivation, the right incentive. Do you, beside like more extrinsic factors, monetary factors, do you see intrinsic motivating factors which are important for people or employees today to play that champion? Or how do you motivate the people to move it forward?
I would first of all say ALTANA has a very good innovation culture. There is, for a chemical company, really a 7% plus spending of revenue in R&D, which is pretty high. So there is an innovation angle basically to all the projects we're doing anyway. But people like to move things forward, see the new products supporting our customers in the market. And so I think there's an intrinsic motivation just to do something innovative. And obviously, sustainability, circular economy also play a very big role, because, I mean, we're all aware that society is changing dramatically right now, because there's pressure on all fronts to, we're just aware we can't continue how we did continue the last decades of handling resources on this planet, right?
Yeah, so it's a good purpose.
Absolutely.
It fulfills a good purpose.
And basically every project we do has an angle on sustainability.
Right. When you look at why certain collaboration projects fail, what people also often mention is very simple things like missing time and missing budgets. Do you have ways to overcome this from the very beginning?
Well, I wish I had a silver bullet there. Yeah. Actually, I mean, the one thing, and it goes back to that strategic alignment topic, right? If you have that search fields, that strategic commitment for like topics where you hope to have over proportional growth, then you might have also a chance to have a bit of over proportional patience in that kind of time and money discussion. Yeah. If you hop on an opportunistic cooperation opportunity and build the strategy as you go, you might not find that kind of patience.
Right. And kind of moving on to the types of, we now looked at a single project, where to anchor it, how to move it forward, how to incentivize people. If there's a broad variety of different types of innovation, business model, product, process, and so on, do you see that certain types are clearly simpler to make a project successful? Or do you see that it's simpler with maybe more mature startup companies, or even the other way around with earlier stage companies?
Yeah, well, in principle, every big chemical corporation has an M&A history, right? So the closer you are to the market, the easier the project becomes. So if a startup is very close, or actually with first revenue already in the market, that's clearly easier to mitigate the obstacles internally than if you start with a very early project. Yeah. On the other hand, we also do that. To start with an early startup is really, for us, it needs to have the potential to become a technology platform.
Okay.
So a platform that goes then in not only one application, but in multiple application ideas. And there it's always good to be early in the game, because you need to prove yourself as the right strategic partner. But that's obviously also internally, I mean, the longer a project goes, the more justification you have to do, right?
So there's lots to do, especially with sustainability and sustainability transition, energy transition, circular economy. If we would be sitting here in 10 years from today, what topic would we discuss then?
We would probably look back and be amused about all the opportunities we didn't see coming.
Yeah.
All the startups, the new ideas, the things that came into existence that we didn't think of.
Yeah, so we should think harder.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much for the discussion today, and thank you to the audience for listening in. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thomas.